So we've entered the 6th month on God's calendar last week. We're now this evening going to be entering the 8th day of God's month. So this is the first 7-day Sabbath of the month. But a week ago, there was a Sabbath. It just wasn't a 7-day Sabbath. It was new moon and the 6th month. This is the month of Elul, E-L-U-L. And so what we want to be doing is preparing to enter in to the 7th month on God's calendar, because we have on the first day, the Festival of Trumpets, the 10th day, the Day of Atonement, the 15th day, the Festival of Tabernacles. And one of these holy days, the Festival of Tabernacles, is one of 3 holy days that the Israelites were commanded to make a pilgrimage to the temple. And as they were making this pilgrimage, for 7 days, by the way, because the Festival of Tabernacles is observed for 7 days. As they were making this pilgrimage, God promised that he would protect their land and their homes that they were leaving in order to go and observe this festival. So this is the 1 month on God's calendar where we're just chock full of holy days. It seems like between holy days and Sabbaths, we're always preparing to enter into something. And in the beginning, I admit that it's a little bit difficult to kind of keep track of these things when I first started observing them, and you want to know that you're doing it right. And as your flesh is being disciplined, your physical flesh is being disciplined, and you're being circumcised from the sinful flesh, it is a little bit difficult to try to make sure that you're withholding and that you're observing these correctly. But as time goes on, I was even thinking this today as I was preparing to enter into Sabbath this evening, is that, and I was doing my chores, I was thinking, this is such a delight. Like, I look forward to God's Sabbaths. I look forward to his holy days and his new moons. And my family does certain things, like on new moon, the first festival of new moon, we are sharing with one another what God is building in us, similarly to what we do in Sabbath. And then the second new moon festival, which is the next day, we actually have a list of questions that we review and reflect on with regard to what God has done in the last month. And I got to tell you, I look forward to that every month. I know that all of my family does, because for one, we're bringing intentional effort to looking at the glory of God and not letting that go, just sort of be lost. And for another, it's extremely encouraging because we are suffering. So it's incredibly encouraging to be able to reflect back on the month and see what he's done. And I'll tell you, every time I sit down to do it, I'm like, I don't know what he's done. But then I start reviewing my journal, I start reviewing the videos I've done in it, and I always end up going, oh my goodness, he's done so much. How can you even deny? And the same thing for the rest of my family members, and we just walk away feeling so encouraged. So these are a delight, and he says that they should be a delight. Like, you need to work your heart into this becoming a delight. The things that you were delighted by before when you were evil in the world, you can't live that way anymore. You can't live according to the flesh if you're in God. And so your heart has to become different. When he talks about you becoming a new creation, like the body, the physical flesh is nothing. He's talking about the heart. And he describes it in Ezekiel chapter 11 and chapter 36, that he removes your heart of stone, places in you a heart of flesh, a softened heart, places a spirit in your heart, and moves you to follow his laws and keep his decrees. So you know where the change is occurring. It's not like you look like a different creation. You feel like a different creation because he is literally changing you through his ministry. So this is what we're preparing for. Now, Melissa contacted me a few weeks back, and she wanted to know if I had some videos on this or if we'd be willing to do some videos, and I let her know whenever we're coming up on a holy day. I am always doing these leading up to it to prepare you, to help you to prepare to enter into it as I'm preparing to enter into it. But if you want if there's ever a topic that you would like to know more about, or you would like to know if I have done a video on that, go to the homepage of the channel. There's a little magnifying glass, the search bar, I'm saying this in a dumbed down way, not because anyone here is dumb, but because I need these kinds of instructions sometimes. And I know that it's been difficult sometimes for people to figure out how to search. So you just go to the homepage of the channel. You click on a Soul Aligned and that link, and then there should be a little magnifying glass and a search. And so you just search for whatever topic you want. So you want to know more about the Festival of Trumpets or the Day of Atonement or Tabernacles, then type in Trumpets, Atonement, Tabernacles. And it's going to pop up with different videos that I've already spoken. I highly recommend that you listen to the videos that are more recent, because God is always, and this should be it should be this way for you too, that He's always building on the understanding that He's already taught you. And so the same is true for me. So what I understood 3 years ago versus now is going to be not necessarily different, but it's going to be an enriched understanding. So you're going to get a lot more meat and potatoes out of more recent videos. So in this video, we're going to study about trumpets, okay? Because the Festival of Trumpets is the first of these holy days that's coming up. And so we want to understand why did God establish a trumpet? Why does He want us to blow the trumpet? You know, what does this mean to Him? And so He always leads me to Numbers 10. The Lord said to Moses, make 2 trumpets of hammered silver and use them for calling the community together and for having the camp set out. Let's repeat. Calling the community together, having the camp set out. Okay, so these are the 2 reasons why they're blowing the trumpets. Calling together, setting out. When both are sounded, the whole community is to assemble before the entrance to the tent of meeting. If only one is sounded, the leaders, the heads of the clans of Israel, are to assemble before you. When a trumpet blast is sounded, the tribes camping on the east are to set out. At the sounding of a second blast, the camps on the south are to set out. So He's establishing an order to things. The blast will be the signal for setting out. To gather the assembly, blow the trumpets, but not with the signal for setting out. Makes sense, because that get a little confusing which thing you're doing, right? So different alarm, alert, signal, different sound for setting out than for gathering. We all got to know what we're doing, right? The sons of Aaron, the priests, are to blow the trumpets. This is to be a lasting ordinance for you in generations to come. Now, don't gloss over that, okay? Who's sounding the trumpets? Aaron, the priest. The sons of Aaron, the priests, are to blow the trumpets. You understand? It's not like any old Joe who decides to have some YouTube channel or false ministry and is telling you all these things. Oh, you need to plant a garden right now. You need to do this. You need to do that. They need to be serving actually as priests. God has to have selected them to be blowing these trumpets, because as we go further in Scripture, these trumpets are not literal anymore. Now it's a warning that's coming from the mouths of God's prophets. And even in Revelation, you see in Revelation 1 that Jesus, his voice sounds like a trumpet. And he goes on to warn, right? To call in, to assemble you and call you in. And he's even speaking to the assemblies, the churches in these respective areas. Not denominations. Don't conflate a divided kingdom with a united kingdom. A divided kingdom has different denominations and traditions. God has a united kingdom that is united by His Spirit. So when He says He's speaking to the 7 churches in these respective areas, it's not like, oh, Pentecostal is in Smyrna and the Nazarenes are in Laodicea. It's not like that. This is one church, multiple assemblies in these respective areas, because, not all of them could assemble in the same area. So He is assembling them, speaking to the assemblies, and blowing a trumpet of warning to assemble them. And you see throughout Scripture that God's going to use this language that He established in Numbers 10 And this concept that he established in Numbers 10 of blowing the trumpets to either set out or to assemble, he's going to use that continuously through his prophets, saying, blow the trumpet, call a sacred assembly, call a fast. Maybe he will relent. And so he's assembling in order to blow this trumpet, this alarm of warning. Now, the trumpets are not only used as an alarm. The trumpets are also used in order to shout for joy. They're blown at a time where you're celebrating something. And calling in to assemble doesn't necessarily always have to have a negative connotation or the connotation of warning of destruction. Although, look, we're living in times where that's going to be the likelihood. When the trumpet is blown, it's an alarm. It is a warning that something is coming. But here we have this month, this 7th month, in which you have the Festival of Trumpets on the first day, the Day of Atonement on the 10th day, and then the Festival of Tabernacles on the 15th day. What is God doing? Is he calling you in, or is he setting you out? He's calling you in, because you need to prepare yourself to enter into the Day of Atonement and the Festival of Tabernacles. So he says here, the sons of Aaron, the priests, are to blow the trumpets. This is to be a lasting ordinance for you and the generations to come. So that hasn't changed. The priests are still doing it, not the false prophets. When you go into battle in your own land against an enemy who's oppressing you, sound a blast on the trumpets, and then you'll be remembered by the Lord your God and rescued from your enemies. Oh, okay, so this is also a way of communicating with God. Also, at your times of rejoicing, your appointed festivals and new moon feasts, you are to sound the trumpets over your burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, and they will be a memorial for you before your God. I am the Lord your God. So, by the way, these are times where your appointed festivals, except for Day of Atonement is a solemn assembly, but your appointed festivals in general are a time of rejoicing, including your new moon feasts, a time of rejoicing, and you are to sound the trumpets over your burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. And no one should say, well, we're not sacrificing anymore. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Oh, yes, we are. Believe me, we are. As his sacrifice, we are to sound the trumpets and rejoice over the sacrifices that we are bringing him. Oh, that's different. We might have to think about that for a minute. Might have to meditate on that. Might even have to check ourselves and make sure that we actually are bringing sacrifices to him, eh? Let's read about the Festival of Trumpets and see what God has to say about it. Leviticus 23, verse 23. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, on the first day of the 7th month, you are to have a day of Sabbath rest, a sacred assembly commemorated with trumpet blasts. So is he calling in or setting out? Well, he's assembling us, so he's calling in. Do no regular work, but present a food offering to the Lord. Now, I want to say a few things about this, okay? Many people, especially in Reform Judaism, because this is what Reform Judaism teaches, have gone by rabbinical commentaries and a bunch of additions to the scroll in which, number one, they are very focused on dates. Well, God has established these appointed times, but what he's taught me is he's not necessarily like, we aren't looking at these dates and saying, oh, this is going to happen on such and such a date. We don't know when it's going to happen, or if anything is going to happen at that time. He might just be wanting us to rend our heart to what he's done and to remember that and have it be on our hearts. So no one should go around prophesying about that and thinking that, or even looking at the dates and thinking this is going to happen on such and such a date. I was very confused by that, so I warn you about this, that God has taught me to rend my heart to his heart, not to dates, not to boxes to be checked. The only thing that we need to be paying attention to as far as a date is concerned is that these are the dates that we're observing it. And then there are also seasonal holy days that don't correlate with dates on God's calendar. Because God has a lunar calendar, he does not have a Gregorian calendar that is based on the sun. His calendar is based on the moon. You can't have a lunar calendar correlate with seasons. So you have season-specific holy days, the Festival of Weeks and the offering of first fruits, and then you have date-specific holy days, which are all the rest. So this is all he's said about the Festival of Trumpets. Say to the Israelites, on the first day of the 7th month, you have a day of Sabbath rest, a sacred assembly, so calling in, assembling, commemorated with trumpet blasts. Do no regular work, but present a food offering to the Lord. So get together for something. There's some reason he's calling you in. In Reform Judaism, they also teach that this is the month of Tishrei. It's not the month of Tishrei. It's never referred to as that in the Bible. Tishrei is a Babylonian name. Ethanim is the name that God assigned for this 7th month. I say that because that should be a warning to you, shouldn't it? If someone uses the language of Babylon, they belong to Babylon. If they use the language of God, they belong to God, because that's the authority on which they speak. Jesus said that. We, people of God, do not use the language of Babylon. And when you start using the language of Babylon, you start using Babylon's concepts. So here's what they did. They wanted to be like the world, and so they created this idea that there is a second calendar, that there's an Exodus calendar, the one that God established in Exodus, that is God's calendar, but it's not called the Exodus calendar, and that there's a creation calendar that begins in Tishrei. And there's not only an additional calendar, but there's a new year. Oh my goodness, a new year? God didn't establish a new year, like as in New Year's Eve, that kind of a worldly celebration. He didn't establish that, but they did. They turned his festival of trumpets into Rosh Hashanah, the head of their year. But this isn't one of God's appointed times. He never said that that was the head of the year. If anything, the head of his year would be the first of Nisan or Aviv. Those are both names that he has used for that first month on his calendar. So those of you going to rabbis, calling people rabbi, and the word says, don't call people rabbi, doesn't it? I don't care if they call themselves Messianic rabbi or, anything else. It does not matter to me. Don't call anyone rabbi. And don't go to people, listen to me, do not go to people who have not accepted Christ. Paul already told you they're loved on account of the patriarchs, but they are enemies as far as the gospel is concerned. They don't have truth. That's why they didn't accept Christ. Do Christians understand that? Because it's written right there in the word. And I understand, because I did this at one time as well, where I thought, I need to know what it means to be a Jew. Well, the word tells me what it means to be a Jew. They don't have the answer of what it means to be a Jew. Their answer to what that means is practicing some man-made abomination that they call Judaism based on some 23andMe criteria of descent. That's not what the Bible says. The Bible says that the criteria for being a Jew means that you are circumcised in heart. There are Gentiles who are Jews, and there are Jews who are Jews, and there are Jews who are not, and there are Gentiles who are not. Okay? That's how that goes. Not all who are descended from Israel are Israel. Not all who are descended from Abraham are Abraham's children. And Jesus himself acknowledged a group of quote-unquote Jews as having been descended from Abraham, and yet he said, you are not Abraham's children, you're children of the devil. Okay? That's in the book of John. The 7th month on God's calendar is just the 7th month. It's not the first month of some addition to the scroll calendar. It also does not contain anywhere on God's calendar a new year, in the sense of New Year and New Year's Eve or New Year festival. It just simply does not contain that. That is in addition to the scroll. And by the way, need I remind you that when Reformed Judaism was being created in Europe, God brought some pretty bad judgment for people reforming his word, because no one has a right to do that. And no one is going to convince me that God wasn't sovereign over that. If you believe in God, then you got to sit and think for a minute, well, why would he bring this on his people? Let's look at 2 Chronicles chapter 7. Because it very literally asks that question and then God answers it. 2 Chronicles chapter 7 verse 19. But if you turn away and forsake the decrees and commands I've given you, and go off to serve other gods and worship them, then I will uproot Israel from my land which I've given them, and reject this temple I've consecrated for my name. I will make it a byword and an object of ridicule among all peoples. And by the way, Who's the temple? What's the temple now? We are. I will make it a byword and an object of ridicule among all peoples. This temple will become a heap of rubble, and all who pass by will be appalled and say, why has the Lord done such a thing to this land and to this temple? So we've been likened to land. We've also been likened to his temple. This actually supposes that people actually believe in God, believe in a sovereign God, and would even ask this question. I don't hear anyone asking this question now. They just come up with victim narratives. But this is a question you need to ask. Why would the Lord do such a thing to this people, to this land, to this temple? Why would he do that? People will answer, because they have forsaken the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who brought them out of Egypt, and have embraced other gods, worshiping and serving them. That is why he brought all this disaster on them. If you are listening to people who speak additions to the scroll, you are guilty. And that is exactly what will happen to you. And it's coming. I've been telling you that it's coming. The Antichrist reign is coming in 3 months. 3 months and 1 week. That's when I will finish what I'm doing. And the Antichrist will rise, it will overpower and kill the witnesses, and he will go after you through his kingdom. Do you see them, by the way, setting up dominion right now? Do you see what they're doing? Do you see what the false prophet is doing? Setting up Alligator Alcatraz and many other places like it. What do you think they're doing? Do you think this is about other people? Like, doesn't affect me, it only affects migrants? You should think again. This affects all who will not bow down to the image of the Antichrist, which is counterfeit Israel. This affects everyone who will oppose the false prophet of the United States. They are setting up their reign. They're setting up dominion. They're not allowed to reign until the witnesses have completed their testifying, but they're preparing, and they don't even know what they're being used for. They don't know they're objects of his wrath. They don't even believe in him in order to consider that, though they claim to be Christian. And isn't that exactly what Jesus said they would do? He said they were going to come to him and say, Lord, Lord, didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we eat with you in your name? And he's going to say, what? Depart from me, evildoers, I never knew you. So they think they know him. They're doing these things in the name of Christianity, supposedly. It's absurd. How anyone even believes this is incredibly absurd. Well, let me ask you something. Do you think that this festival of trumpets, in which God is assembling us and calling us in, and the prophets have said, call, blow the trumpet, call a sacred assembly, do you think there might be something important about this, about observing these holy days and understanding them and returning to God? Do you think there might be something important in what he has commanded us to do at this very time in history? So why aren't you doing it? This festival of trumpets, if what I'm saying is correct, and it is going to occur 2.5 weeks before the Antichrist 2.5 months before the Antichrist rises. Do you realize what God is doing here in calling you in giving you an opportunity to enter into the Festival of Trumpets, into the Day of Atonement, on which atonement was made for the Israelites, symbolizing what Jesus did for us? Or the Festival of Tabernacles, understanding that God had the Israelites live in temporary shelters while they were wandering the wilderness before he brought them into the land. Is there any symbolism there that you might need to lean into in order to understand your covenant? You are being given an opportunity to be spared. You're being given an opportunity to recognize and enter into your covenant. And I'm not saying being spared from suffering. Suffering's a given for God's people in the Bible. He made it really clear. He wasn't tricking us or anything. I'm talking about being spared from destruction. Because y'all are going into this furnace. You will go into this furnace, whether you make it or not. You're going to be brought through that. Do you know why? Revelation 3 tells us why when he's speaking to the church in Philadelphia. Because you have kept my command to endure patiently, I'm going to spare you from the hour of trial that's going to come on the entire world. to test the inhabitants of the earth. Why? Because the witnesses, the two lampstands, the two bodies of believers in Smyrna and Philadelphia, symbolically, have kept his command to endure patiently. Y'all haven't kept nothing. Tell me, what are you doing? Because you'd be sharing it on this channel. You'd be assembling. You would be moved by God's Spirit to assemble with the rest of the body and to encourage them and share your testimony. But you're not doing it. You haven't done nothing. And because of that, you will either go into that furnace as an object of his mercy if you return to him, or an object of his wrath. You won't be spared from that. But if you are an object of his mercy, you'll be brought out of it and will have saved yourself for having returned to him and finally obeyed him and accepted his ministry. As for me, I'm leaving this world. I am completing what God set me apart to do in 3 months and 1 week. I'm almost done. And I have suffered and shared with you my suffering on display like the scum of the earth, like one at the end of the procession condemned to die in the arena. I have shared with you everything. I have held nothing back. I have not for 1 second said, well, I'm entitled to privacy. Ever. I have never done that. I have shared everything with you guys, even to the point of people talking about my personal experiences and twisting it around to either condemn me, slander me, or blame me for the things that God has brought me through in order to be an offering to you. This is the last video I will ever do on the Festival of Trumpets. The very last video that I will do. And I want you to know something. The witnesses are going away, and the word talks about how priestly instruction in the law will cease. And the council of the elders will come to an end. And in the book of Amos, it talks about a famine, not of bread and water, but a famine of hearing the words of the Lord. So I hope you remember the things that I'm saying, because it's coming to an end, and the Antichrist will rise. And you're going to need something, aren't you? Blow the trumpets. Call a sacred assembly. Observe your Sabbath. Enter God's rest. Do no regular work, but present yourselves as a food offering, as a sacrifice to the Lord. This is a time for calling in. The 7th new moon, the Festival of Trumpets, this year is going to correlate with July 26th, 2005. Remember that God's days begin in the evening, so this will begin at sundown on July 26th, and it will continue until sundown on July 27th. 9 days later, on the 10th of God's month, is the Day of Atonement. So it would make sense that God would call you in to start preparing you to enter into that, because on the Day of Atonement, you're going to completely withhold from yourself. And anyone who does not withhold from themselves, the word says they're going to die. This is the last set of these holy days in this 7th month before the Antichrist rises. The last set of holy days that you have to observe before the Antichrist rises. Are you going to return? Listen to the things that the prophets have said about these trumpets. Jeremiah 4:19, my bowels, I'm pained at my very heart. My heart maketh a noise in me. I cannot hold my peace because thou hast heard, O my soul, the sound of the trumpet, the alarm of war. Psalm 89:15, blessed is the people that know the joyful sound. They shall walk, O Lord, in the light of thy countenance. Do you recognize the trumpets? Do you recognize what God is doing? The alarms that he's blowing in order to communicate with you. Do you recognize it? Because Revelation 8 and 9 talk about a lot of trumpets that he's blowing in order to get your attention, in order to call you in. 2 Chronicles chapter 7 talks about, when I send these things to the earth, my people who are called by my name need to return to me, humble themselves, seek my face, repent, turn from their wicked ways. Do you recognize it? We're living during unprecedented times. The things that are happening right now are truly unprecedented. So do you recognize it or not? Or do you recognize something's off, but you deny the sovereignty of God? Hosea 5:8, blow ye the cornet, A cornet is a horned instrument. It's kind of like a trumpet. Blow ye the cornet in Gibeah, and the trumpet in Ramah. Cry aloud at Bethaven after thee, O Benjamin. Jeremiah 4:21. How long shall I see the standard and hear the sound of the trumpet? Jeremiah 6:1. O ye children of Benjamin, gather yourselves to flee out of the midst of Jerusalem, and blow the trumpet in Tekoa, and set up a sign of fire in Beth Hassarim. For evil appeareth out of the north, and great destruction. Jeremiah 6:17. Also I set watchmen over you, saying, hearken to the sound of the trumpet. But they said, we will not hearken. Sounds familiar. Jeremiah 42:14, saying, no, but we will go into the land of Egypt, where we will see no war, nor hear the sound of the trumpet. So y'all don't want to hear it, do you? Nor have hunger for bread, and there we will dwell. And now therefore hear the word of the Lord, ye remnant of Judah. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, if ye wholly set your faces to enter Egypt, and to go to sojourn there, then it shall come to pass that the sword which ye feared shall overtake you there in the land of Egypt, and the famine whereof ye were afraid shall follow close after you there in Egypt, and there ye shall die. Ezekiel 33 verse 3. If when he seeth the sword, he being the watchman, seeth the sword come upon the land, he blow the trumpet and warn the people, then whosoever heareth the sound of the trumpet, and taketh not warning, if the sword come and take him away, his blood shall be upon his own head. He heard the sound of the trumpet, and he took not warning, his blood shall be upon him. But he that taketh warning shall deliver his soul. But if the watchman see the sword come and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned, if the sword come and take any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity. So he's still going to die. But his blood will I require at the watchman's hand. So let me just ask you something, just for a quick minute here. Do you think that given God's instructions that a watchman must warn whether people listen or they fail to listen, and that if the watchman does not warn, that blood is going to be on the watchman's head, do you think that I'm going to spare your feelings and forsake my own salvation by not fulfilling my duty? There's a fat chance of that, okay? It's not happening. I am going to fulfill what God set me apart to do, and I'm going to do it the way that he tells me to do it, not the way that people email me to do it, because they don't like being convicted by the things I say. No one has ever liked what the prophets had to say. And God very clearly told Ezekiel, these people are not going to listen to you because they do not listen to me. I know that the same is true about you. But I also know that a remnant of you are going to be brought out, because God knows how to bring you down to finally listen to the things that he has to say. Hosea 8:1. Set the trumpet to thy mouth. He shall come as an eagle against the house of the Lord, because they have transgressed my covenant and trespassed against my law. Joel 2:1. Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm on my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand. I'm trying to tell you that exact thing, aren't I? It is nigh at hand. You don't have time to keep being of the world. Joel 2:15. Blow the trumpet in Zion, sanctify a fast, call a solemn assembly. Gather the people, sanctify the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children and those that suck the breast. Let the bridegroom go forth of his chamber, and the bride out of her closet. Let the priests, the ministers of the Lord, weep between the porch and the altar, and let them say, spare thy people, O Lord, and give not thine heritage to reproach, that the heathen should rule over them. Wherefore should they say among the people, where is their God? Amos 2:2. But I will send a fire upon Moab, and it shall devour the places of Kerioth, and Moab shall die with tumult, while shouting, and with the sound of the trumpet. And I will cut off the judge from the midst thereof, and will slay all the princes thereof with him, saith the Lord. Zephaniah 1:15. That day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of wasteness and desolation, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, a day of the trumpet and alarm against the fenced cities and against the high towers. And I will bring distress upon men, that they shall walk like blind men, because they have sinned against the Lord, and their blood shall be poured out as dust, and their flesh as the dung. They're walking as blind men. By the way, do you recognize that statement about famine? About not a famine of water or bread, but of hearing the word of the Lord? Gee, I wonder if I've been talking about sword, famine, wild beast, and plague for at least the last 10 months. I know that I did a whole series on it 10 months ago. Neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them in the day of the Lord's wrath, but the whole land shall be devoured by the fire of his jealousy, for he shall make even a speedy riddance of all of them that dwell in the land. I'm trying to warn you. I listen sometimes, sometimes I go looking for something that God had spoken to me a while back, and I spoke to you in a video, and I'll listen to a video as I did earlier today that was from maybe a year or two ago. And there's a different sort of, I tried to speak this message in a gentler, more tender kind of way. It hasn't mattered how I spoke the message. There are no more people who are obeying it now than there were back then. And that's been prophesied in the word. There's a reason why God says to his servants, or says of his servants, that their children are going to be carried to them, and they're going to see them, and they're going to say, who bore me these? I was barren and exiled. Who bore me these? There's a reason why the servants of God are crying out to the Lord and saying, has anyone believed our message? Who has believed our message? To whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Because God's servants don't see it until God brings them down. There is a reason God sends his servants. It's to warn. And they don't listen. He already says that in Ezekiel. They don't listen because they don't listen to him. And so they kill the prophets. And time again, God has to bring these people face down in the mud in order for them to return to him. Do you think you're different? Who has believed the message? To whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Show me then. Show me the fruit. You're not here. You're not assembling. You're not sharing your testimony. You're not doing the basic things that God requires. Show me the fruit. Stop speaking empty, worthless words. Show me the fruit. Discern this message with God.